Hey there and welcome to a new Blender tutorial where I will be showing you how to make an advanced glass shader. So I have already set my scene up with two little diamonds and two glasses, two different cups, so I can show it to you better. Now what will be the difference between just a normal glass shader and the shader I will be making with you today is the following. This is the normal glass shader with the default parameters and everything. You can see it doesn't really look like real glass, and then there is the glass shader which I will be showing you how to make. You can already see we have some dispersion which indicates that this is some sort of crystal glass, and you can also see the light refracting a little bit better. Apart from that, you can see that the normal glass shader usually tends to have some black spots which are reflective but usually do not refract any objects behind them, which is often the case when you don't have enough light bounces, and you can see my version does not have that. So it really deals a lot better with it, and I will be showing you how to get the same result that I got in just a moment. Also you can see that the diamond really refracts the light a little bit better. So without any further ado, let's hop straight into it by just looking at what a glass shader in its most basic form is, and that is this here. Now this is really good enough for most things. You would really, let's just call this glass and give this here the same material, glass. Now in its most basic form, this is good enough for most stuff. If you do not really care about what is being shown to you and you just really want to have something that looks like glass in your scene, this is probably the way to go. If you have a little bit more emphasis on your scene, where you have a lot of glass and you wanted to have that special features and the focus of your scene is really the glass itself, then you should be following this. Also, this is not architectural glass. What does that mean? If you have a window, you would want to have neither this nor this. So really what you want to have for windows, let me just show it to you fairly quickly, would be a mix shader with a light path node, where you would say, if you have a shadow, so is shadow ray, let me see, is shadow ray, feed it into the effector, get a transparent output. So we have a normal glass, and if a shadow is being cast by the glass, make it fully transparent. This reassures that you have a lot of light in your scene, because what usually happens when you have light is after it reflects and refracts, usually you cast a shadow. Like you can see here, these little shadows are being cast by your glass, and you usually do not want to have that because it usually creates a lot of more noise in your scene, in the glass, in the scene. So I would suggest keeping this here for architectural renders. It not only renders faster because it doesn't have to calculate the shadows, but also usually looks a little bit better. If it's not architectural glass, and this one I have shown in my last glass tutorial, you can just use a volume scatter node, get it like that, not the volume scatter but the absorption like this. And usually glasses are tinted a little bit greenish, which is a result of the manufacturing. And as you can see, if I get this to a higher amount, you can see that greenish tint starting to form there. But then again, you didn't really get rid of this here, and you don't have any dispersion. This doesn't have any dispersion in it as a function. Also when we click here, we just get the different sorts of glass. So what can we do to get the effect? So we need to reconstruct what glass actually is. So one way to do that would be to get a Shift A and then search for refraction. Now the main part of the glass is refraction and the rest of glass is reflection. So really what we want to have is a refraction shader, which you can see here, looks like this. You can see it's already looking like some glass. It refracts its surroundings, but then again, in the black parts where it doesn't refract anything, you would want to have reflection. Now, how do you get that? You get a mix shader, you get a Fresnel node, plug it in here into the effector, and right off the bat nothing happened because you have the same IOR here as here, so that means the black parts stay black. But then again, what you can do would be to get a glossy texture or a reflection texture or node and plug it in here. And right off the bat you can see that something is starting to happen within the parameters of the black stuff. Inside a little bit as well, because as you can see what the Fresnel node does is it creates a mask based on camera location. So what that means is the parts where it's brighter, it's going to show this here, and the part where it's darker, it's going to show the other way around, sorry. It's going to show this here. So what that means is the following. We get a nice blend between the glossy node and the refraction node, and once we give it both the same roughness, so 0.01, I would always suggest giving your glass material some roughness, then you can see we basically get the same thing as we would get when using a normal glass BSDF shader, which I can show to you. Glass BSDF, just look at it like this. It is literally the same thing. So now that we know that, we can reconstruct what real crystal glass would look like. So we would need this refraction still, we would need this glossy still, which is important, but now how do we make the dispersion happen? Basically, dispersion happens when different wavelengths of light get refracted in a different manner. So one way to do that would be to just simply duplicate this here 2 times, have this here be completely red, so RGB, make this R1, make this just blue, RG or RGB would usually be like this, make this green and this here blue. So also the alpha should be 1. So now we get this. We need to connect it somehow, because right now only the green refraction shader is really showing anything. So one way we could do that would be to use an add shader. Now usually you don't really use add shaders because it's not physically correct. Because of some simple standard, if you use glossy and glossy, it would reflect a little bit more light than it used to. That is really against the laws of physics. But here right now what we are doing is completely in the realm of what is possible in real life, because we are combining the different wavelengths of light to get white. And that is really how it works in real life as well. It's a little bit of a physics class here. And now you can see we get white glass after combining RG and B, which is really how your monitor works as well. So now we basically got the same thing, but we still do not have any dispersion. So what should we do? Well, let's just choose a high dispersion amount, which would be 0.05. So I'm going to take it away from this, so 1.4, and I'm going to add 0.05 to this, so 1.5. And as you can see, because I chose a fairly high amount, you can see that there is different wavelengths being separated in the corners or in the edges. So let me just show you like this. Maybe I should not use 512 samples, maybe just 32. As you can see, it is being separated in the areas of high contrast, where you have edges, where you have angles. There the light gets separated and split up into its different components. Control B, like this. And now what that lets us do is have a refraction image. So that is really what this is. It's giving us the ability to split light. Now you can see it's a little bit darker than usual, and it also has some blotchiness in it. We can get rid of that, and it will also increase the effect. Now what we want to do for that is just simply grab another mix shader, get a light path node, and now you can really use multiple different things for this. I'm going to show you mix, or no, we want the glass BSDF. So right now we have refraction, which is being added in here, and then we are turning it into the glass with this glossy node over here. Now we want to mix it with a normal glass shader, based on one of these parameters here. Now, what are these parameters? There's a multiple different ones that work, like for instance the transmission depth. You can see it really enhances the effect and gets rid of the blotchiness inside, at least in some portions. In some portions it doesn't. Now there's multiple parameters that work from this, but what I found to be working the best would be, let me just find it, the transmission ray. Yes, I am blind. It is right here. It usually gives the most natural amount of dispersion. It mutes it a little bit, so we don't get really this much of dispersion happening. Now we still have the problem with the glass showing the dark spots or the blotches, where it doesn't refract anything because we ran out of bounces. Now really here, what it would look like would be like this, 12, 12, like this, and here 4. So you can see it really is a lot darker, which is the standard amount of bounces in the scene by default of Blender. You can of course change that manually or choose one of these presets here. Full global illumination would probably get rid of most of it, but not all of it. So I'm just going to use the default values because there's not a need to go further. Just give this here 12 as well, because that is really what influences the dark spots. But as you can see, it doesn't really get rid of all of it. So one way to do it would be to still use the light path, add a mix shader, like this. And now we want to get a transparency node, transparent, and plug it in here. Now this doesn't really look realistic because half of our glass is missing right now. So one way to get only the stuff that we want, so only the black spots to go away, would be to use the ray depth, which is here, get a math node. And now this might look a little bit complicated, but I'm going to explain what it's doing. Basically we want the greater than. So if the ray depth, by the way, enable clumping, if the ray depth is larger than some amount, make it transparent, is basically what it's saying. So right now for a ray cast of 1, we want to have everything that is in direct illumination to be glass. The rest should be transparent. Now this does give you this result right here, which is actually pretty cool, but not realistic in any means. So one way to get around the dark spots is by using this. As you can see, there is no dark spots right here. If I increase this to the maximum, so 12, we can see the black spots reappear, which is not really what we want. And it gives the impression that after 12 iterations we get dark spots. No, that's not like that. Basically what it's doing is, if there is more than 12 steps, then paste it back. But right now we have the exact amount of light bounces which we have specified here. So you need always to have one less than you have specified here. So if I took this to 11, you could see this dark spot does no longer exist. As you can see, it got a lot duller, and here as well it is still a little bit dark, but that is because it's refracting the surrounding. It's not like it's not refracting anything anymore. Now it's just refracting the surrounding, which is just a little bit darker. But as you can see, it's not black, it's like brownish, darkish. So it's a lot better than before. So now that we actually have glass that only refracts what we want, and after a certain point of refraction just stops working altogether and gives us a clean result, what can we do to make this mess more understandable? We could group it, which is fairly easy. Just select all of it like this, drag over it with your mouse, and then Ctrl G. Now we have these grouping output and inputs, which we can use to specify our stuff. So now I would want to first have the roughness. I want to control the roughness, so I'm going to choose this here and plug it into every input that has a roughness, or every output basically. Every output that does have a roughness slider I want the roughness of this here to impact. So that's about it, I think. Yes. And now if I exit this by pressing tab, you can see I have this roughness feature here, which changes the overall property of my glass. As I said, I want to have a little bit of roughness at least. So now I want to change the IOR. Now, basically, how do I change the IOR? Because its most basic form, I have it here, but if I change it all at once, it will not be correct, right? So one way to change the IOR and still have the possibility to actually have this dispersion would be to drag out from here, get a math node again. This one is set to add. I'm going to plug it into the IOR here. And I'm going to do the same thing here, just in math. And I'm going to set this to subtract and plug it into this IOR. So now, again, we have a lot of dispersion. And this here is the dispersion amount. So I can just simply drag this in here and drag this in here. And now I can control how much dispersion I want. So if I choose to press N, then under group I have this value here, dispersion amount. I hope I spelled it correctly. If not, well, what can you do? So right now here you can change the base IOR of your things, and here you can change the dispersion amount. So 0.02. And you can see you have this dispersion again here, which gives you the nice effect. Now, what if you wanted to connect some normals? I would suggest that you also do it for the normals. So plug it into everything here that does feature a normal. And also the IOR, plug it into the Fresnel node. Don't forget that, it's fairly important, because if you change the IOR, the Fresnel for this glossy component should change as well, so that you don't get any messiness happening. And now that you have connected all of that up, we can basically get to the next best thing, and that is glass coloration. Now, how do you colorate your glass? I've shown that in my last glass tutorial. You would simply drag out from here. Okay, that does not work apparently with the grouped input. Add a volume absorption, which I've shown you in the beginning. And now here where it's a shader, you can just get a new output like this. Get this, plug it into the color, and this is just the color. I can move it up, and here you can choose the density. And for density, we do not want it to be called like that. We want to be calling it color amount. Let's just call it like that. You could call it whatever you want. You could also call it Steve. So here we have Steve. So now we have this. I can plug it in here and say I want 5 Steve, and then it's going to give me a little bit of greenness here. Yes, English is not my first language, but Steve is doing the job. So you can call it really whatever you want, but that is the basic principle behind it. You could also change it to, like, let's say you want a completely blue glass, and you would set Steve to like 500. And then you would get that. So let's just have a Steve of 2.5. And now really, this setup does take away a bit of light. It took me a lot of experimentation to find out how much light it really takes from you. And apparently the answer is really simple. Each refraction shader takes 10%. So what you would need to do is add 10% more light to this. How would you do that? Well, basically it's fairly easy. Also, when the glossy component is at less than 1, it's very inoptimal. So go into the node group, go to the color of the glossiness, and change RGB to 1 or hue saturation to 0, 0, and 1. So how do you add more light to this? You can go into each component, go to the value, or to this value, and just type in 1.1, 1.1, and 1.1. And now you can see it does look again like a glass BSDF from the brightness, and you get the dispersion, which is looking really nice. You get the reflection and everything. So this is basically a glass BSDF on steroids. So now, is there anything else you would want to add? Well, I don't think so. You could just this is like dispersion glass. Let's give it the same material here, dispersion glass, and now here diamond. For diamond, the basic IOR is usually about 2.5. I'm going to give this one the same material, diamond, 2.5, and a sleeve value of nothing. Okay, so now that we got that, you have got a nice looking diamond, you have got a nice looking glass. As I said, don't use this for architectural rendering. It does take a little bit longer, as you can see. This is the normal glass BSDF node, which took 4 minutes and 12 seconds to render. And then this is my version of the glass with the dispersion and everything. It took 5 minutes and 15. It's a minute more, like this is one fourth more of rendering. So that is what, 25% more render time. But usually you will not render like a whole image full of glass. This is not basically what you would expect, 25% increase in render time. It would probably be more about 5% if you had a scene with less glass than me. But basically what I'm trying to say is don't use this for anything architectural, for background things. Use this for really when you have something that you really have to put emphasis on. Like for instance, here you have like let's hide everything, and you get like a cube, like so, like this. Yes, I am very good at modeling. I'm just going to do a quick stop, like so. Let's say you have like this little crystal glass thing stuff. Going to rotate it accordingly. Doop, doop. You're going to give it like this dispersion glass material without any Steve value, and right here you can see that it refracts the glass or the surrounding very nicely, and you can still get the dispersion here, which is really cool. So I suggest that you experiment a little bit with it, and as you can see, you get some really nice and cool results with it. So that's going to be it, and I will be seeing you, this looks really cool, and I will be seeing you in the next tutorial. Goodbye!